is a review of the security for the protection of personally identifiable customer information, and Keith Hogan of our cybersecurity specialists, or one of them, will begin, and I see John Sennett is here as well. So please, Keith, go ahead.
Good morning, Chair Ziegelman and Commissioners. I'm here today to present staff findings and conclusions regarding utility protective measures for the safeguarding of sensitive customer information, better known in the cybersecurity field as personally identifiable information, or PII. I also discuss how our oversight of this information protection will continue to evolve as a result of technological changes in the Commission's new Reforming the Energy Vision initiative. While our report provides a positive assessment of the utility's efforts since August 2013, cybersecurity throughout the world has become a major issue. One only has to look back on the recent attacks on Sony and Target to see this. For over a decade, the Commission has exercised oversight of the utilities in New York to monitor their performance in securing their critical operation control systems from cyber compromise. In more recent years, with a clearly growing problem of the cyber threat to databases containing large amounts of private customer information, the Commission has expanded its cybersecurity oversight at the utilities to be assured that customers' identity information is properly protected. We have directed the major utilities to prepare and keep constantly updated comprehensive strategic plans for cybersecurity preparedness. These plans are required to address not only defensive cyber technology and utility company processes and procedures, but also to take into account executive level briefing, budgeting for cybersecurity, staffing needs, and training for all employees. DPS staff works closely with the New York Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Services, the New York Office of Information Technology Services, each of the several industry sector cyber threat information sharing and analysis centers, to ensure that utilities in New York are addressing cybersecurity threats and vulnerabilities in a diligent fashion. We study closely the stream of threat and vulnerability information issued by the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, other federal agencies, and the voluminous literature from the respected cybersecurity professional journals, seeking to know better where and how the utilities need to work to keep pace with the threat. Finally, we share information with the utilities constantly. The utility security officials, at our urging, have begun to meet regularly with each other in a now structured working group to compare and share information about the cybersecurity challenges each has experienced and to offer recommendations for solutions. DPS staff members with utility companies in these meetings to take, DPS staff members with the utility companies in these meetings to take advantage of the face-to-face focus they offer. In August 2013, the Commission ordered the large energy utilities, Central Hudson, Consolidated Edison, Orange and Rockland, New York State Electric and Gas, Rochester Gas and Electric, National Fuel Gas, National Grid, and the two larger water utilities, American Water and United Water, to prepare within 60 days updated and extensive plans detailing the necessary steps to be taken for implementing stronger security for customer information. This came on the heels of security breaches at NYSEG RG&E in January 2012 and Central Hudson Gas and Electric in February 2013. The Commission ordered that those updated PII protection plans adhere to certain requirements, including the annual retention of a credentialed third-party consultant. The 9 security and response subject areas to be covered in each plan were incident response and recovery training, contractual arrangement with a third-party forensics expert, contractual arrangement with a credit monitoring service, employee awareness training specific to PII protection, inventory control and timely destruction of PII, segregation and compartmentalization of PII, physical security to limit personal unauthorized or unnecessary access to PII, upgrading of technical security controls with leading-edge information system protections, retention annually of a credentialed third-party consultant to assess the quality of company PII protections. Of the key subject areas, the selection of third-party consultants and the implementation of recurring annual third-party review was the most important. These consultants were to assess each utility's adherence to the 9 security and response areas per the August 2013 order. The required ongoing third-party review is particularly important for assisting each company in making well-informed and complex decisions for procuring and deploying leading-edge cybersecurity technologies that are rapidly evolving. Consultants selected by the companies to fulfill the requirements were to be only those credentialed by the payment card industry. These consultants have proven expertise and extensive experience in the area of PII security, policies, procedures, and controls. Staff conducted on-site reviews at each company to ensure that coverage and attention to each of the 9 subject areas was moving forward. Staff returned to each company in the second half of 2014 to assess progress on security upgrades. Staff examined the findings and recommendations in the third-party consultant reports, and no major security shortcomings were identified. Since the issuance of the order, each company has added considerable resources to the protection of PII. Staffing for this purpose has increased. In addition, the companies have updated their data network protective technologies and have increased budgets to support future security program upgrades. Staff will continue to review, at least annually, the updates to each company plan to ensure it is being kept current and that goals in those plans are being acted upon. Annual evaluation of utility companies' PII protection program by a credentialed third-party consultant remains an important requirement of the August 2013 order. This measure is especially important for assisting each company in making well-informed and complex decisions for procuring and deploying leading-edge and rapidly evolving cybersecurity technologies. Our utilities must confront this new and daunting level of hacker sophistication with leading-edge security responses. Such responses must not only include the deployment of up-to-date technological defenses, but also a diligent focus on constant awareness training to make sure utility employees truly appreciate the threat, and also the implementation and enforcement of company processes and procedures to ensure accountability at all levels of the organization, and which make the possibility of mistakes less likely. Our oversight of PII security will continue to evolve to reflect changes in the energy industry and changes in technology. For example, as was discussed at the last session, one of the principal ways to facilitate consumer adoption of demand response, renewable energy products, energy efficiency, and other distributed energy resources is to create a digital marketplace which brings consumers and service providers together, makes it easy for consumers to shop for these products, and enables customers to select vendors to receive their personally identifiable information, such as their energy use. Providing consumers the opportunity to easily share their PII with DER providers and other vendors they select will help consumers obtain customized quotes for solutions that are most directly applicable to them and facilitate informed purchase decisions. It is imperative that consumers and service providers have complete confidence in this digital marketplace. PII must be transmitted, received, and processed in a manner that will protect its confidentiality, integrity, and timely availability. Safeguarding PII on this digital marketplace will therefore be of paramount importance, as will ensuring that PII shared as a result of this marketplace is secured by participating service providers. The best practices and recommended standards applicable to utility systems containing PII will also be applicable to this new digital marketplace, as will other new websites, platforms, and technologies that may develop in the future. Our oversight is not static, but will continue to evolve as technology changes. Cybersecurity best practices and recommended standards, especially those that have long been in development and recently issued by the National Institutes of Standards and Technology, will provide the utilities with well-formed guidelines specifically tailored to the demands of smart grid information exchange. And as discussed, these standards and best practices must also be applicable to the digital marketplace that will be developed as part of the REV initiative. Cyber threats are evolving rapidly. Even the most carefully and expertly crafted guidelines will not replace the need to be vigilant to the need for new defenses to new threats that may be only hours old. Utility systems and anticipated REV digital marketplace will require constant cyber vigilance and prompt responses. Staff will continue to monitor utility practices and report back to the Commission as needed. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. One of the questions I was going to have is, and I will ask you and John, what keeps you up at night, but I have a feeling after listening to this, we're all going to be up. So, first of all, I know that something that we've done for a long time now at the Commission is really taking the issues of both physical security threats and cybersecurity threats, increasingly focusing just as well on that quite seriously. And it's something that I think, to the credit of my predecessor chairs, started well before it became something popular in the rest of the industry. And we have a very capable team who's working with the utilities to make certain that we do stay current. And I congratulate both Commissioner Akampora, who I know helped lead that, and then, of course, Gary as well, in making certain that we were well-staffed and had this competency internally, because it is so critical. Obviously, today, the papers, again, reported on threats to the electric industry associated with both physical and cybersecurity, so these are critical. Question I have for you, and maybe you can elaborate on, either you or John, a little bit, because I think it's important, is the use of these third-party credentialed individuals and how you selected the particular credentialing and why that's important in terms of making sure that we're current on best practices.
Well, we selected these third-party consultants based on the payment card industry credentials, because those who work in that particular area of information security would be most equipped to make an assessment in regards to the Commission order.
It was a matter of quality control too. We wanted to make sure that any consultant selected for this purpose by the companies was qualified to do so, and we didn't want any marginal or less than qualified consultants to be doing this work. And the consultants that are certified by the payment card industry are very up to speed on leading edge technologies, are in a very strong position to recommend to the companies what they should be procuring and implementing.
And then in our review of the audits, then we'll look at what the experts say. Look, these are the things you should be doing, and then we look at adherence.
That's right.
Part of the utilities. And then I'm also noticing the NIST and other work. I mean, the thing that it strikes me is that this is a continuing, evolving, and developing area. And question, and I think you've talked about it, but maybe if you want to elaborate a little bit more, John, on what you're doing and what your staff's doing personally to just stay current. Because I think the concern is obviously not that we won't do what we know, is just how do we make sure we're staying a little bit ahead of the game.
Every working day, Keith and I are communicating by email and by telephone with security authorities, federal authorities at the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, with our state office of information technology services with organizations known as information sharing and analysis centers. We're reading the professional literature every day, and we are talking to the utilities regularly, constantly, about the issues that they're experiencing. And we are comparing notes about emerging technologies, emerging tools that can help in the fight.
Yeah, a lot can be learned by interfacing just with the boots on the ground.
Right.
You know, seeing what they're dealing with on a day-to-day basis.
Keith is on the road quite almost constantly at the utilities, going through their security procedures and programs to make sure that they are up to date and relevant.
And then one more question. So I am curious. So what are the emerging issues? What are the things that have you thinking about now that should be the next stage of what we look at?
A lot of there are some cybersecurity commenters very recently making the point that the utilities and other industries are spending a great deal of money protecting their data network perimeter from malware that might come in one way or another. And that is a challenge, and one that needs to continue diligently. But there is also growing concern that there is malware existing, sleeping, if you will, in company networks that can linger in the network for a long time before. And this malware is so sophisticated that it can sleep and then activate itself at an unsuspected point in time and then infiltrate the rest of the company network. So the utilities and other businesses need to do need to give more attention to learning about anything that might already be in their network that could do harm.
They need to know what they have, what they got, what they're running,
Right.
and do continuous monitoring of those assets that they know of to ensure that any anomalous activity will be detected.
I just want to make sure, because things can always be misinterpreted. I mean, our experience with the utilities, and I know my personal experience in working with the CEOs and the heads of their security, is that the utilities in our state are absolutely alert to this, and are, there's never an issue with them in making sure that they're doing everything they can.
If I could just add in terms of what keeps you awake, the data shows that 60% or more of all cyber breaches begin with a human mistake. So attentiveness and training of all employees from the CEO on down is a absolute necessity. The technique of spear phishing, where an innocent-looking email, an official-looking email, comes into the company, but it's a trick, is a very effective technique, and it's too often effective.
But you are correct; they are addressing these concerns.
Thanks. Any further questions? Yeah.
I just want to add to that. I think what you just said, John, is really important. We get, I don't know how many hundreds of emails a week, and I know personally that I have called our IT people on numerous occasions, asking them when I saw something, never to open, are you aware, is there something that's been sent out with regard to that? And they tell me immediately, delete that, don't ever open it. And so I think that that's something that we really need to make sure that, the staff, as you said, it comes from an innocent staff person opening up something that shouldn't be opened. And that's when the door gets open.
Even if it comes from a colleague or an associate of yours, and it's the least bit peculiar, it doesn't sound right, doesn't look right.
Yeah.
Pick up the phone and call that person and say, "Did you send this to me?"
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yeah. I think that that's something that really we need to maybe do a little bit more outreach with our staff, because this is becoming more and more common. You see it all the time. And, trying to make sure that people, as you say, don't think it's just an innocent email sent by another staff member is extremely important. So I thank you all for the work that you're doing. This is really important stuff. And as we move forward with our REV proceeding, we want consumers to have some sense of security that we are looking out for them, including all the utilities too, so that, again, the choices are there, but you have to be an educated consumer. So thank you very much.
And further.
Just a comment. I can say from personal experience out in the telecom industry and from conversations I've had with major utility personnel in the last couple of years, and also what I've seen going on in other states through the NARUC organization. You folks are really very well respected in the industry, both locally and nationally, and I'm impressed with the work you're doing. Keep it up.
Thank you.
First of all, thank you very much, Keith and John. As John knows, I, when I was a staffer, sat nearby your unit for a long time and came to very much appreciate your diligence and your oversight that you did, and did see just how many hours you put into not only going out on the road, but also poring over documents and really being ever present as a resource as well. John, last year when you did this presentation, and this isn't a trick question, this is really just a statement, you had said that you had quoted from a national conference speaker who talked about one of the most important things, which is that utilities need to closely monitor network traffic and technology that allows for a comprehensive picture of risk, being able to identify and respond to an event quickly. And it really is a credit to everyone in New York working together to ensure that we are doing that, and utilities are. And it is something that when we all go out to utilities and they now very much talk about their cybersecurity and what they're doing, and they always talk very glowingly about the work that your unit does, even if you're tough, and that is very much appreciated, and we all really are partnering together. Historically, the Commission has always made utility security a priority, and over the years with the different chairs, we've increasingly stepped up and evolved with real-time issues that need to be addressed. Internally at the Commission, we've all taken, not only commissioners but staff, cybersecurity training online that has been helpful, and I know that's an ongoing item that we continue to do and make sure that we're up to date on. So I really just wanted to really thank all of you for the continuing diligence at looking what needs to be done and helping with that and trying to avert threats or neutralize them before they have any legs, and working in a partnership in a cooperative way is really great. And Keith, I know this was your first time presenting, so congratulations. Thank you.
So not to make light of a otherwise very serious topic, but I like the advice of not reading weird emails, so it's going to like half my day. So, okay, next item is item 301.
Thank you.
Which is our electric utility emergency plan review, and Aphrodita Bardi, a utility engineer, will be presenting this to us. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. Emergency plans are an important component of a utility's ability to plan for and respond to events effectively. the plans not only contain internal procedures to how each utility restores service, but also include protocols relating to communicating with outside stakeholders and the public. For example, the plans contain elements such as processes for defining and prioritizing restoration of critical facilities and procedures during localized and wide-scale flooding events. The plans also contain protocols for establishing and issuing estimated restoration times, as well as communicating with life support equipment customers, government officials, media, website, and social media. The size and scales of events over the last few years, including Superstorm Sandy, Hurricane Irene, and Tropical Storm Lee, identified areas for improvement within the plans. As a result, emergency plans were revised in recent years based on lessons learned during those events. Item 301 specifically relates to the joint review of the recently filed electric emergency plans by department staff. The plans were filed on December 15th to comply with the Public Service Law. If you recall, you approved the plans for the first time last year pursuant to new legislation. At that time, staff reviewed the draft utility plans thoroughly, interacted with utilities and other stakeholders, and as a result, the utility plans were significantly modified and improved, and you approved the final improved plans last year in March. For the second time, the utilities filed plans December 2014 for commission approval. Staff's detailed assessment of the utility emergency plans included review of thousands of pages. Staff met with each utility to discuss recommended changes. Given the amount of effort put into reworking the emergency plans over the past few years, and especially last year, there were a relatively small number of changes to the emergency plans needed this year. The utilities then filed updated plans this month reflecting these changes. The only exception was National Grid. National Grid filed a significantly revamped emergency plan from that filed last year. While the new plan provides emergency instructions and references in a more concise format for use by individuals designated to manage the response, the substance of the plan remains the same. Based on staff's review, we recommend that the Commission approve the electric utility emergency plans filed in March. We also recommend that the Commission certify to the Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Services, as required by statute, that each utility's emergency plan is sufficient to provide for the timely and safe restoration of energy services after an event. In addition to utility emergency plan filings and staff review, I would like to briefly discuss a few of the storm events that occurred this winter. In November, parts of Buffalo received up to 88 inches of snow due to a lake effect storm. Staff and the utilities provided support in both the State Emergency Operations Center, EOC, in Erie County and the State EOC in Albany. In fact, we had staff embedded in the State EOC in Albany around the clock for over a week. The Buffalo storm provided the opportunity for coordination between non-electric and electric utilities in anticipation of major outages associated with potential flooding. Right after the Buffalo storm, staff provided support to the State EOC for the Thanksgiving storm. The Thanksgiving storm affected the Hudson Valley area. Central Hudson was the utility most severely affected by the storm. The storm was worse than forecasted, yet the company was able to quickly ramp up crewing to restore customers. As you know, Chair, your participation in utility conference calls pre-storm and during storm events resulted in a more proactive stance from utilities in storm response. I'd like to mention that neither the Buffalo storm or the Thanksgiving storm triggered Part 105 and scorecard reporting, which occurs when the restoration period following a storm event exceeds 3 days. These two storms, although relatively minor in terms of the number and length of outages, provided opportunities for the utilities to utilize their 2014 approved emergency plans in a storm setting. Overall, the utilities' response to these events was effective. However, we expect that future events may result in further modifications and improvements to the emergency plans. In addition to the ongoing review and improvement to the utility plans, there are some improvements in emergency management efforts of staff and the utilities that aren't reflected in the emergency plans. This past year, staff has been involved in promoting additional communications between the telecommunication and electric utilities in the state. We have seen evidence of such improved coordination. For example, telecommunication companies attended electric utility emergency drills or exercises this past year. During the Thanksgiving storm, Central Hudson's telecommunication liaison process worked seamlessly for the utilities in communicating outages and priority restorations. Some electric utilities have been proactively providing information to the telecommunication companies in their service territory, which has been positively received. Staff and the utilities recognize the importance of training and exercising the plans. Given that hurricane season starts on July 1st, all the plans require at least one drill be performed each year prior to this date. These drills will include outside stakeholders and evaluation of the communication processes identified in emergency plans and used during an event. Feedback from participants, both within and external to the utilities, will also be reviewed to determine if adjustments to emergency plans are needed. The utilities have begun scheduling these drills, and staff has them marked in their calendars. Lastly, these storms have also led to improvements in our department. We realized this past year that we needed to ramp up our internal training for staffing the state EOC desk. Since then, we have held several internal DPS EOC trainings and have sent staff to state EOC training classes. These trainings have been well attended by staff, and I would like to take this opportunity to thank attendees and the teacher and coordinator of our internal DPS EOC training, Cindy Abraham. In conclusion, based on staff's review, we recommend that the Commission approve the electric utility emergency plans filed in March. Once again, we also recommend that the Commission certify to the Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Services that each utility's emergency plan is sufficient to provide for the timely and safe restoration of energy services after an event. This concludes my presentation, and I will be happy to address any questions at this time.
Thank you. So just a couple things. One is I think that staff is to be congratulated. I think this is a huge effort on the part of our staff during these storms. She mentioned I was to storm duty in Buffalo and again in Long Island, and was absolutely impressed at how responsive folks were in getting out there, staying out there, and then getting on a train and moving into Central Hudson right afterwards over the Thanksgiving holidays. So I know, Mike, this falls under you and Raj, obviously, but, really great, dedicated people who are very much willing to give up personal time to make sure that the lights stay on or get back on for everyone else. So that is true, and I am appreciative now of how critical the planning is. One of the things that I know we're working on, and something that's been a discussion with the utilities this past year, which we've seen, I think, a great deal improvement over, is the idea of getting things in place and coordination among the utilities. And I think to the credit of really the work that's being done by staff and by the utilities, and a little bit of nudging and pushing from the administration on this area too, is that we're seeing the ability to get people in place and response time actually being accelerated. So I think both the Buffalo storm and the Central Hudson storm restoration times were faster than were initially predicted, only because we had people in place and they were ready. And unfortunately, as the governor has noted, we're getting really, really good at responding to these significant climatic events. So, congratulations to staff on that. I have no questions. I do want to note, though, even though this was a 2013 storm, National Grid was actually just received a national award for its response time for a 2013 event. And I think, again, it's an area that we as a state take very seriously. It's, when you're out there, you're sort of appreciative of the huge amount of logistic organization among not just the utilities, but transportation agencies, healthcare, and everyone that has to sort of be on, as well as initial responders and local communities. So it's an incredible thing, but I'm appreciative of the work that staff has done to make sure that, from our perspective, the lights stay on, the gas remains safe, the telecommunications folks have access, and we're doing everything we can to keep people safe in these events. So thank you for that. Any further questions, comments on this item?
I'm particularly happy to hear about the increased coordination between telecom and electric utilities. In particular, the cable companies with their fancy two-way cable boxes know when the power goes out what neighborhoods are out before the electric companies do, because the electric companies mostly count on people to call them up and tell them that they're out of power. So that flow of information is good for the electric companies. And in the other direction, I heard after Sandy, I suppose off the record, from one cable company that said they had more outages in the restoration process than they had during the storm, when the electric company crews were going through and whacking up all the trees that had become tangled up with the lines. But with coordination, if you can have the cable and telecom crews going along with the power company crews, the cable people can say, "Don't touch that orange wire," and preserve the service for telecom, which can still operate even though the lines are on the ground. So keep up the good work and keep nudging them to cooperate more.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I do want to ask, and then I'll make a couple of comments, but I do want to ask about the advancements in mutual aid assistance. I know in 2013 we had made significant inroads on the mutual assistance issues that we were having, and looking at different groups that we weren't necessarily a part of, but that we were working with those groups, not only regionally but nationally. And at that time it was really new and information. And I'm just wondering if we can have an update on the continuing advancements of the mutual assistance and where we think we're at with that.
Now that is a really smart woman. Go ahead, Mike.
So there's two different groups out there that have been created after Sandy. One is what we refer to as NAMAG, the North Atlantic Mutual Assistance Group. That's probably most relevant to our current discussion. The other one is what's called the National Response Event. The National Response Event is basically a national organization. There's been a lot of activity on the NAMAG group over the last year. And what we've seen out of that group is a more responsive response to mutual aid needs, because it's a much larger region that the companies can reach out to ask for resources. So for a number of the storms we're talking about, they use this NAMAG process. And if it had been a New York NAMAG process, no crews would have been moved. So the fact that we moved to this NAMAG process that includes Mid-Atlantic, Northeast, and Canada allows us to move crews for one of those types of events. So I think we're seeing that the larger pool of resources is very helpful to the process. we're continuing to work with. We continue to work with our New York partners to talk to them about how this NAMEG process is working and monitoring that process. And I think it's just like any other thing in emergency planning. It's going to continue to evolve, but we've seen some immediate short-term improvements in that area. The NRE is a different event that they actually have dedicated staff to run that event. They run practice events at least once a year. We have not attended those events. We're actually not privy to those events, but we do, again, meet with our utility partners, and they talk us through it. And I think we have a comfort level with that it's going to be significantly better than where Sandy is. We continue to work with the utilities to make sure that there's transparency in this process so that we have a good sense that it's working properly, but that's just an ongoing dialogue that we have.
And what's the acronym for Mid-Atlantic?
Mid-Atlantic is now part of NAMEG.
Okay.
Mid-Atlantic
So they got rid of.
used to be called MAMA.
Yeah, I just wanted to hear you say that. Sorry.
But it really it quadrupled the number of crews that are in the calls, and so it's been very positive. There's some issues associated with it. There's some delicate type state to state type things, but overall it's been positive. Like I said, we're able to bring crews in that we would not have been able to bring in under the old administration, because the MAMA area would take care of the MAMA crews. And the same thing, there was a New England group, they would take care of their crews. Then they would reach out to, make them available to New York. But now that we're all part of a big group, then it makes it more efficient for us.
The other thing that happened last year, which I think is another improvement, is we're starting to actually get the transportation thruway authorities engaged in this. So when these crews are moving through storm, we're opening up the highway so they're not being stuck at tolls and things like that. It is really an impressive and a massive amount of coordination that needs to go on at these times.
Yeah, I am very proud of all of the work that's been done by folks internally and externally, and I think it is, from each time that we have an event, the deep dive that's done afterwards to see what worked, what didn't, and what can be done better, and the continuing dialogue. Historically, the emergency electric plans have been in existence. What happened in 2013, what changed was that we looked even harder at those plans from the lessons that were learned from Hurricane Sandy, as well as Tropical Lee and Hurricane Irene. And what's really been important to me is seeing and identifying different issues and working on those issues in a very comprehensive way. Again, it's sort of, internally, then externally within the state, and now even more so with other states and nationally, and really taking that all and making sure that each time we do improve and try to get better. And I think that it's been a very good partnership. And the other thing that changed in 2013 was that it was really the first time that the commission would be approving the plan. So it took it to a newer level. And then we also now have to certify that these plans are appropriate and give it to Homeland Security and file it with them as well. So I do really think that the diligence and the vigilance and the continued working through issues is very important. I do just want to comment, though, that as to the telecommunications sector, it is part, and correct me if I'm wrong, it is part of the emergency plans that we have the electric utilities work on improved communications with the telecommunications sector and work on coordinated efforts, and that is being done. And communication with all sectors is a important aspect.
I would comment that we've made improvements there, clearly. You may recall we had a couple of meetings with the electric utilities, the telecoms. And we've definitely made progress since then, but we recognize there's more progress we need to make, and we're going to continue to work on that.
Okay, great. So continued communication with all stakeholders. I know that staff is also involved in training with folks, especially local officials, and continuing that and making sure that it's appropriate not only from best practices, but drilling down for each locality that may have different needs and depending on the event, different things that need to be done before, during, and after. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further? So let's take a vote. All those in favor of the recommendation to approve the amended electric utility emergency plans as described, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing no opposition, there being none, the recommendation is adopted. We're going to move now to the consent agenda, and are any of the commissioners wanting to abstain or recuse themselves? Hearing none, all those in favor of the recommendations on the consent agenda, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing no opposition, there being none, the recommendations are adopted. Secretary Burgess, are there any other items in front of us today?
There are no other items for today. The next commission session is April 16th at 10:30.
Great. Thank you. Remember to file your taxes beforehand. We're adjourned.